burnout is not a badge of honor.
Word.
Young me would say, listen, we will go till the wheels fall off.
In software engineering, find a really good open source project and then just see how they write code.
That's gold.
Yeah.
That's gold. I think, man, that's really, really good. That's really good. I've never actually thought about it that way.
Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Build, a podcast where we talk about all the things that happens in engineering after or besides writing code. My name is Ope, and this is Uma. Today we're going to be talking about growing your hard skills as a software engineer. I'm saying as a software engineer, but the way we structure this, it really isn't only for software engineers. It's everybody.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah. Basically, I think let's start by defining hard skills, right? What would you define as hard skills?
Fair. I'll say hard skills are the thing that make you a thing. So, for example, right, when somebody says, hey, I am an accountant, it is balancing accounts that makes you an accountant.
Yeah.
It's not about how well can you manage the customer, how well do you work with people. The thing, the specific thing that people associate with, like the label, that's the hard skill. That's my definition. How about you?
Yeah. I agree, right? The core aspect of what makes your profession uniquely your profession, right?
Yep.
There are some attributes that are transferable within professions, right? But the hard skills are the things that are like, okay, a software engineer is known for writing code primarily, right?
Exactly.
There's designing systems, there's all of that, but at the end of the day, you need to translate some thought processes into code. And in terms of software engineering, the hard skills is writing code.
Generally.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about our experiences building those hard skills, right?
Yep.
So for me personally, when I started writing code, my first experience with writing code was in an aerospace class, actually. And I was writing MATLAB. And MATLAB is all about analysis and stuff like that. And it was a little bit tricky at first, but, I wrote some stuff and it worked. And it's usually the classic hello world, right? And then from there, you start doing some more stuff that are beyond hello world. You start, doing assignments and stuff like that. But eventually I moved on to, this was years after, doing homeworks, right? Doing coursework that they're like, hey, go write code for this thing to make it work. At the time, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just, to some extent, just copying what we either see online and then we just make it work, right? But obviously, we were understanding the core aspects of what we're doing. And then eventually, when I then said, okay, this is the school part of writing code, right? There's the non-school part of writing code, which is super, super important for people to kind of understand, because everything you learn in school is not necessarily, a lot of it is not quite transferable. Some of it, most of it is not quite transferable, right? It's like what you're learning in school is kind of different. So when I'm like, okay, I did like one internship and then I saw that, all right, that code is different.
Yeah. Then
I'm like, let me start working on projects. Let me start building web applications. Let me start building websites. And then from there, my hard skills kind of grew, because I was like, okay, there's this web app. What does it look like behind, right? What does the code for this look like? Let me go build it. There's this mobile app. What does the code for it look like? Let me go build it. And that's how my hard skills kind of grew, right? In that context. Then when you then get into like corporate America, where you're now building code for projects, that's then different. So that's a brief overview of my experience, kind of like building those hard skills. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So how did I build my hard skills as a software engineer? Well, I've had like two phases of being a software engineer. Mm-hmm. When I worked in Nigeria, I really wasn't a software engineer. I mostly was a systems engineer. Mm-hmm. But once in a while, I needed to write Java code. So like a lot of the systems are in Java. So I would sometimes write Java code, or I would write Python scripts to automate things for some of my colleagues. But they weren't always really good. But I'll just be like, hey, I could have a developer do this work, or I already understand a lot of the requirements. I could just do it and just build it myself.
So what was your title then when you were working there?
Oh, payment systems engineer.
Payment systems engineer.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that was my first phase. I built stuff that was deployed at banks in Nigeria. Obviously, you can tell that it kind of is different compared to American work environment. But I built stuff deployed at banks that went well. But it wasn't what my job function was. So after a couple years, when I moved to the US, went to grad school, and then in grad school, it was hard. They'll be like, oh, implement a Kalman filter or write a neural network from scratch in grad school. And I was like, oh my God, this is like the real stuff.
Yeah.
This isn't like, there is no SDK protecting you or anything. Like, sit down and make this stuff work.
Yeah.
So yeah, generally it was like, I generally used Udemy a lot. So I just find a Udemy class and then just learn how to do it. So I find like environments where I could learn how to do it, and then I would just do it.
So when you were learning how to do it, right? Like, I think this is something that some people would be glad that we spoke about, right? In terms of learning those hard skills, do you learn what you need to get the job done, or do you kind of like learn everything in that space? I'll give you an example. You need to build APIs, right? In Java Spring Boot, for example. Do you just learn a template to go build that API and then you just copy and then paste it and then you just change the endpoint, change the implementation of the code? Or do you actually go and say, okay, what is Java Spring Boot, right? What are annotations, right? Yep. There's so many parts of it, right? What are components within Java Spring Boot, right? How does Java Spring Boot work? How is Java different from Java Spring Boot, right? How do you learn? I am very, very curious about yours specifically.
For me, it's a hybrid of both of them. If I am learning on my own, I would want to take structured classes to get a good overview. I call this build taste. I'll talk about taste later, but I want to have taste first. So I get like a broad perspective, and then I can now start to think about like, oh, well, this is a template and this is what the template is doing and maybe why it is doing it. And I find that very useful because having an understanding of how different components, for example, right, if you say you want to use aspect, I think it's called aspects in Hibernate. I've used Hibernate for a bit, but if you want to use aspect-based programming, I think that's what it's called. That's the thing that if you just copy a template, you might not get how to do those kind of things. But if you get somebody to give you a wide perspective, you're like, I actually want that. So I generally use that approach when I want to learn something brand new. But also sometimes if it's something like I have to start working on today, it's a brand new thing, I'm just gonna copy a template. How about you? What do you do?
I mainly want to learn the whole thing. That's just how it works, right? I feel like knowing how everything works, how everything is connected, for me personally, I feel like it gives me an edge in my brain because everyone knows the template. Right? It's how other parts of it work and how I can then extend this or to know that whether I'm doing this thing the right way. That's what kind of sets a lot of people apart, right? In that you can copy that template and use that template within like a specific code space. But you check in a PR and someone is like, why is this thing this? And you can't answer it. Because you just copied that template and you just pasted it. And if you don't know why the thing is that, then are you actually learning or are you just copying something else and just trying to get the job done, right? Don't get me wrong, there's a difference, right? There's a difference between actually learning, right, and just trying to get the job done. For the most part, majority of the time, if I am in a corporate environment, if I'm in a corporate setting, if I have the time, I will take my time to learn. I would be like, okay, let me go take a course, like a 0 to this thing, right? And it doesn't even have to be like a really, really long course, right? I would want to maybe find like a short YouTube videos, the type of videos that I create, a shameless plug. I would like to find those and kind of like use those to say, okay, I have a general understanding of this thing and I kind of know how it works as opposed to just copying the code and just pasting it.
And I think on that note as well, when you see templates, the thing is also like, you might find like 12 templates online. How do you know a good template from a bad template? So that is where I think like taste comes into play. But taste essentially is why one person cooks a meal and it is this, somebody says, oh, this is wonderful. And that person with same ingredients cooks something and is like, I won't pay as much for that. It's like the je ne sais quoi, or like the thing that you cannot say, but it just looks better or it just is better. And that building the taste, I think it's it's like a chicken and egg part of learning a new skill. You don't know taste because you've not worked in with that skill, or you don't have as much experience. But to build taste, you actually have to do things. There are a few shortcuts around it. So, for example, in software engineering, find a really good open source project. and then just see how they write code.
That's gold.
Yeah.
That's gold. That's, I think, man, that's really, really good. That's really good. I've never actually thought about it that way, because open source is, if it's good, if it's a good open source project that multiple people are invested in,
Yes.
then there's likely discussions about how to do something a specific way, right?
Yes.
How to get, is this the best way to do this thing in the context of this code and in the context of the future, right? Potentially, right? How does you writing this thing now affect this thing now, but also in the future? And open source is a great place to actually see that. That's really dope. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the topic of taste as well, I think this is part of why, people get like corporate jobs, because one of the ways to actually build taste is to be around people that have taste. You could get that from open source projects, but most times if you get a job in a place where like you're not fighting to survive. So for example, if it's a startup, it might not always be easy to, because like the priority is on speed. But if you find a place that balances speed and like quality, you can build taste there. Or if you can find like good mentorship within like somebody that is working on that skill that will review your code. By the time you get like some savage reviews on your code, like 2 or 3 times, if you care about the work, you'll build taste over time. Because you can always go and reference their code and say, hey, how did somebody do this? Or like, how did he solve this problem? Or like you just pick their brain and they're like, hey, how do I introduce this dependency into this thing? But you get all that. You can build the taste in a corporate environment. I think that's one of the good things about like learning to do things in a corporate environment. You can actually build taste from your colleagues.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I was at work, I was writing code and I was trying to check the code in, and there are multiple ways you can do something, right? That's just the essence of programming, specifically coding, right? But I have a mentor who was assigned to me, and I was going to do it in a specific way. Like I was just going to, for some context, I was going to just pass data from one class to another, and maybe the method signature would have had maybe like 4 or maybe 5. And my mentor had done very, very similar work. And when I was going to tell her that I was going to do this, she was like, oh, you don't have to. I actually created this class that does what you want it to do. And I was like, oh, let me see it. She sent me the pull request, and she created a class object, not even a class object, a Java record to hold all that stuff. That like, instead of passing 5 this thing, right? She just created one this thing to just hold it. And I was like, oh, interesting. That's another way to do that's much, much cleaner, right? That way the code doesn't have all that 5 this thing that's passing. Then you'd have to figure out which one and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I saw her code and I was like, oh, yeah, this is a much, much better way of doing things. And to your point, if you do reach out to senior engineers, if you do just ask them, right? Just send your code in for review. After they don't flame the code like 4 or 5 times, right? Then you learn, right? That's ultimately the best way of kind of like building that taste, being around people who have it, but also not being afraid to be flamed.
Yeah. On the same, riffing off of what you said, I think another thing that's super important is find people that are really good at that thing and ask them what problems do they have, and then solve the problems for them. Because they have, you especially when you really want to actually like be serious about it. If you find someone that has a problem and that knows enough about it to actually support you, say, hey, like, what are the problems you have? Like, if, for example, if you volunteer in a club or something, and then there is somebody that's the head of accounts, for example, and then a person ask him, hey, like, what's up? Do you need any help with balancing the books? Or like you have like a project, or like just like even something in your neighborhood or website, reach out to the person that's the site admin or something and be like, hey, like, how do I support you? And the fact that the person knows that is getting something out of it makes the person vested in your interests and like helping you grow as well. So that way the person gives you like, hey, could you help me do ABC? Well, like, yeah, give it a very good shot. Make sure that you understand what ABC means. But when you understand what ABC is, like, just give it a shot. Like, do a good job, do something that you're proud of, and then send it to them and have them give you feedback about it. And that way, subsequent, like, do this a few times, you it's obviously most times that might be for free. But if you do it a few times, the person gets to actually feel like he's mentoring you and he's getting something out of what he puts in. And that way he's invested in you winning, and because he also wins when you win.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I completely agree. I think another way I found myself kind of like getting better at like building taste and just getting better at the core things is just, I know it sounds very cliche, but just doing the work,
Bro.
like just doing it over and over again,
Bro.
right? Keep showing up,
Yep.
literally, right? Like, say you write this project, say you write this code, and today the code works, right? It could be for a personal project, it could be at work, right? But every time I've gone back and I've looked at code that I've written, I can always see something to make better.
Yes.
Sometimes it's because at that moment I didn't have all the time
Yes.
to make this thing as clean.
Yep.
Other times it's just because I didn't know enough at the time,
Exactly.
right? I like my knowledge of what the code was, or of just how code work in general, right, was not as polished as how it is now.
Yeah.
And then I can then go there and say, okay, hey, maybe I should not have, maybe I should make one global variable
Yeah.
for the skin palette of my app, for example.
Fair.
That way, if I want to change this if I want to change this thing in this part of the app, I don't have to go to 15 pages to go
Yes.
change it, right?
Yeah.
I can change it in this place, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe based on this flow, or maybe based on this logic, I should probably have a test here, or I should probably have a check here, because ultimately the code is going to grow,
Yeah.
right? Or what is something that could go wrong,
Yeah.
right? With time, you kind of learn those things, but they only show up, right, if you have the opportunity to exercise them,
Yeah.
right? If you have the opportunity to actually do it. And the only time that you have that opportunity to do it is if you go back to the code.
Yeah.
If you never go back to the code, then ultimately you're just going through life doing the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But if you go back to stuff that you've seen before and be like, oh man, okay, what could I have done differently here? Let me change this thing to reflect this new learning that I have. That's how you kind of get better as well.
Yeah. On something similar. So getting better. Another thing I find is just seek skill. What does that even mean? I'll go a bit back. When I moved to the US in 2018. 2017, something blew my mind. Netflix was only in maybe US and Canada. And then one day I read they turned on a switch and it was in 150 countries. And I was like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
How do you just turn on a switch and then you go to 150 countries? Like, how do you scale stuff? Like, how do you do things like that? But I think the meta thing there is you build, like, if you work in a place where you have to do something at scale for a lot of people, it forces you to build the right skill. It forces you to have taste. Because if you don't do that, the cards are like, you're going to have your tower falling. So, for example, if you find somebody that says, hey, I've cooked for 10,000 people in the Navy. Well, that person, if you tell him you're doing a small party in your house, I'm like, I'll do this thing in the morning between when I wake up and before I brush my teeth, right? Like, skill forces you to actually build really good taste, because if you don't have skill, you can't keep up. So if you find a place that has skill, lean in.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. I think the quality of the code that I used to write when I was creating software automations for my team, right? The network engineers just on my team to help them automate the stuff that we're doing. And the code that I was writing when it wasn't my team, when the software that I was writing was now for a group of engineers, right? Like not just network engineers on my team, but network engineers in the org, right?
Yep.
When your services are responsible for not just, okay, hey, this small thing, they can just come to you to fix it. Now, if multiple people are using it, then it automatically forces you to think, okay, what could go wrong here, right? How can I write this thing to be more extensible? How can I write this thing in a way where if I need to fix it, I know exactly where the problem is, right? How can I make it as simple as possible, yet so robust? Because it is complicated stuff, right? When the impact is greater, right? When the impact of the work that you're doing is bigger, you automatically build this. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
Yep. So like find that environment. So like find the environment where that skill matters at a high level, and then just like lean into that environment, right? So like I was generally saying like find skill or seek skill, but like seek skill in an environment where the thing matters, right? Yeah. If you do that, bam, I think you will. By the time like you've had one or two incidents, like obviously don't seek incidents.
Yeah.
But like when you have had when you see that the impact of that thing being done well is very high, I think you find that like you will step up and you'll find the way to build the skills to deliver things at that scale.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if you've been at a team where they receive a lot of incidents, right, where their code is not, where it's like, oh, there's a Sev 1, well, not Sev 1, there's a Sev 2, there's an outage here, there's a problem there. You go and you look at their code and you realize a lot of stuff could be written differently.
Yeah.
Right? Or small changes that like someone made a small change and that small change is what broke this thing.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't add up.
Yeah.
Right? That's where I think places where the impact of the work, places where the impact of doing things wrongly is so huge.
Yeah.
That's where you kind of learn, or rather, if you are with people who know what they're doing, you automatically learn.
Yeah. Be an accountant in a bank. When end of day, if the accounts are not balanced, there's a fire.
Exactly.
You kind of learn like, hey, we should do all these things and we should like be very careful.
Yeah.
But on my final point, to building a skill, make sure you have fun. Like, honestly, fun doesn't mean that your job is fun. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
But have fun means like have time to unplug and back off of that thing and like just do things that interest you. Go swimming, run, and then come back to it. But like you need to find also a balance in going hard and then backing off. Because if all you do when you're trying to build a skill is just keep pushing at it and you never back off, you will wear yourself out very quickly.
At some point in time, you are going to break.
Yeah.
Something is going to break. Either you or the thing, and it's most likely you. Because the thing has been here forever and it's going to be here forever.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You'll most likely be the one that will break. And I also want to add, this is something that I've learned over time. Burnout is not a badge of honor.
Word.
Young me would say, listen, we will go till the wheels fall off. But as I've grown older and as I've kind of like learned, burnout is not a badge of honor, right? The whatever thing that you're trying to do, as you said, step back, but also doing it tired, doing it exhausted, doing it when you need to rest, you kind of create neural pathways in your brain where that's what is associated with the thing over time.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
Because you don't feel good doing it, right?
Yes.
You feel tired. So one thing that I always like to do for myself personally is just remind myself that, hey, that thing that you want to spend 2 hours or maybe 3 hours, right? You want to spend midnight to 3 a.m. doing, you can probably get it done better and enjoy it if you maybe do it from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Because that 3 hours that you're spending over in the night when you're actually supposed to be sleeping, when your brain, when nothing is adding up, right? If you actually rest and you do it in the morning, right? That's 7 to 8, maybe 7 to 9 itself, right? You would accomplish more and feel better doing it as opposed to doing it over a time when you're tired and exhausted.
Yeah. And if you're having fun, honestly, like when I'm doing some things engineering wise and I'm having fun, it is easy to spend way more time than like your job demands if you really are enjoying it. So make sure you're having fun. Make sure you have a healthy work environment around you. As much as possible, like seek work environments or seek people around you that, are very committed to help you grow, but also know how to balance that with like keeping a healthy workspace. If you do that, I think you're just going to have a lot of space to grow your skills.
Completely agree. The key is to go long. The key is to go far, is not to go fast.
Yep.
So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much for watching and thank you for listening wherever you are. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. We'll catch you on the next episode. Goodbye.